Alrighty, welcome everyone. I'm Teeaboo and I am here to do a quick little extemporaneous update video about things on the channel and stuff. I don't want to dilly-dally, so let's get right to it. Let's start off with the thing that most people are probably here for, seasonals. I haven't been watching them. That's kind of crazy, right? So here's the deal with seasonals. Everybody in the comments who, as things have started to air for the new season, has been asking me, "Are you going to start watching Beastar season 2? Are you going to start watching what's the other one? Eurocamp season 2? Are you going to watch this, that, and the other?" And the answer broadly, as an umbrella broad answer, is no. Nope. Not while it's airing. And this more specific answer is, if the show is currently airing, I'm not going to watch it on this channel. If it has stopped airing, well, we'll get to that. I'll consider making a slot for more recent seasonal shows and making that a poll slot, but I'm not going to watch seasonal shows while they're airing. And I got a few reasons behind that. The biggest one and most obvious one is that the way that I was doing it previously with treasure hunting is unsustainable. It just doesn't work. It's legit suicide to watch every show that comes out every season, and blah, it's too much. And we knew that, and I knew that going in when I started doing it, but it was still fun, and it is still fun, and I do kind of miss it because it's fun, but it's not worth it. It's not worth it to sacrifice all the pulled shows that I really care about and that the people who pay for me to live really care about, and so it's not worth it. Beyond that, there are a couple of things. One, it brings in the kind of fans that I don't really care about. People who are just here to watch that one show and aren't really interested in me or my commentary, and maybe this is vain or whatever, but who aren't really interested in me or my commentary. They're more looking for either a way to watch the show that's airing that they want to watch without paying for it, which is very frequent, and more frequent in seasonal shows, I think, or they're just looking for anybody anywhere to be talking about the thing that they want to be talking about, so that they can talk about it in the comments, and and I'm not interested in that. I'm just not. I'm not really interested in that kind of lightning fast jump around between one show to another sort of fandom. I'm interested in investigating shows for their value, and I find that that's really difficult to do when they're airing. So there's one reason. Here's another reason. I don't really like being beholden to watching one episode per week. I like to be able to be like, fuck, that was crazy dope cliffhanger, and then I guess we're gonna watch another episode because we can and I want to. I really like being able to do that. It's one of the things that I think distinguishes the way that I do my content from the way that other people do their content. Besides, paying attention to the media and attempting to glean value from it, because those are the things that I care about. But yeah, that's another little issue. There's another issue, which is copyright, and it's kind of obvious when you put it the way that it really happens. If I'm making a video every day, and every day I watch a show, but I'm only doing one show for some number of weeks, if that show, unbeknownst to me, is under the guidance, or whatever you would call it, under the control, let's say, of one of the asshole third-party copyright corporations like Molebeat, which runs their company by copyright claiming people who make media, and they get paid by production companies to do that, then if I'm four episodes into a show that I'm watching once a week, and it's like Eurocamp was last season, or whenever I was watching Eurocamp, then I will get one copyright strike for all of those videos, for all 3 or 4 videos, and I can dispute that. If, however, I'm watching 3 new shows in a season, and 2 of them happen to be owned by Molebeat or similar, those are 2 separate copyright strikes. And if I post a new episode, that's a separate copyright strike. And you should know that on YouTube, 3 strikes equals bye-bye your channel. Same thing with Mega, same thing with many of the other services that I use to put my shit up. That's why my Mega account has been gone for months, because of a series of strikes that I got for Eurocamp by Molebeat. They did a bunch of crazy shit, and it fucked over my account for a while until I actually disputed all the notifications, and they're all bullshit, and hey, I've got a Mega account now, which is wonderful. But the whole point, and I think I got a little bit off the rails, the whole point is that it is far more dangerous copyright-wise to be watching new shows constantly as they're airing because you don't know what the copyright situation with those shows is. If, however, you're watching something that's already aired and some other reactors have already dealt with copyright, then you've got a better idea of it. And more importantly, if it's just one slot of your 7 slots of the week, or 6 if you have break day like I do now, which is great for mental health, by the way, and it's break day, that's when I'm making this, which is also wonderful, then it's a lot less likely that you're going to get your channel obliterated for a single copyright strike. Still going to get copyright strikes. That's part and parcel to the business that I'm in. There's no, choice about it. It's going to happen, but it's a lot less terrifying and a lot less scary. And those copyright strikes are a big part of why I stopped doing Treasure Hunt in the first place, along with plenty of personal bullshit and the fact that it was killing me and the fact that I had to move and was getting settled in this new place and all this other stuff. But that's all kind of external and secondary to the real problems that I have with watching seasonals while they're airing. And the last one of those that I want to focus on is the sort of exploitation and or use of reaction content in order to obtain content that is not yours. So this is kind of an interesting double gray area because reaction content on its own is a gray area copyright-wise. It takes some arguing to argue that the content that I make, or more accurately, the content that most reactors make, is in fact either educational or meaningfully transformative of the work. And I like to think that I put in a lot of effort to ensure that my content is transformative. But
we have questions, and I don't want to alarm you. None of us want to put an axe in your head or anything.
No, I don't want to do that. That was really sad.
Right. We want to just, get along. We're all tired. I'm tired. But I'll go to work if I need to.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Make an intimidation check.
But there's also this aspect of not being able to control how people use your content. I can go all over the place and say, hey, don't watch my videos if you're just watching them to watch the show that I'm watching. That's not cool. But, well, a couple things. One, if I really were hardcore about that, I would have only timer-based videos on my channel, and I would not provide picture-in-picture videos. I provide them anyway, so maybe that's on me. Sure, but providing picture-in-picture videos is massively important for garnering an audience and massively convenient compared to timer-based versions. Not everybody wants to sync up a thing. Lots of people are watching on their phones or mobile devices and can't do that. And so providing the picture-in-picture version for convenience makes a lot of sense. But I can't control how people use my content, and I can't prevent people from watching my content, not because they care about my content, but just because it's a way to see the anime that they want to see. And I do not want to be a pirate haven. The thing that I have noticed is that when a show has already been out for a few months, that's the dividing line. When a show's already been out for a few months, people don't really care. They'll find it wherever they want to find it. They can find it on Kiss Anime. They can find it on GoGo Anime. They can find it on any of the whatever blah blah anime sites, or they can find it on any torrent site or on Ya or on Crunchyroll and watch it that way. And the fact that my videos do have picture-in-picture versions doesn't really come up that much, and it isn't really a problem that makes me feel weird morally, because on the one hand, I do believe that my content is transformative, and I do believe that there's a point to doing this media, and I do believe that it can be powerful and educational and useful and inspiring and valuable and all of those wonderful things. But that requires the people who are watching it to be using it in that way. And I find that those people who come to the channel specifically for seasonal content are not using it that way. And that irks me. So that's basically my spiel about seasonals, and really, I could have just said, I ain't gonna watch seasonals while they're airing, bye, that's it, there's no explanation, and that would have been valid too, but I decided to give you the thoughts that are circling around in my brain, and maybe they're not coherent arguments, but they are the reasons why I don't want to watch seasonals right now. I am, and will continue to consider the possibility of adding a poll slot for seasonal shows. The issue with integrating seasonal shows into my other poll slots is that there's this thing called recency bias, and it happens all the time, and I've watched it happen with other reactors. Semblance of Sanity, for example. The issue here is if you throw a show that's that aired last season on a poll with a bunch of other shows that aired random times, that show that aired last season is going to win almost every time. And that's kind of rough and not something that I want in the thing. So the idea would be collect a group of seasonal shows that I've heard interesting things about and want to watch, or at least want to check out, put them on a poll all against each other, and then they've got a level playing field to argue against each other, and people can go crazy in the Discord and yell at each other about which shows were better and figure it out, and we can poll it out, and that'll be pretty cool. I hope, but I don't have a timeline for that, and I'm not making any promises about that coming around. So if you are super duper psyched for Beastars Season 2, that's awesome, and I'm not against that, but I'm not going to watch it on my channel, at least until I figure out a way to do it where it feels fair and it doesn't feel like I'm exploiting the way that I do content to make stuff for seasonal watchers when I don't really want seasonal watchers on the channel. I want people who are invested in the medium. And that's not to say that people who are watching seasonal anime aren't, it's just there's a different group, and that's fine. Okay. All of this talk about eventually putting something onto a poll leads us into the second major topic of discussion for today's extemporaneous video, and that is the poll that just happened. So about about 2 months ago, I threw up a video about polling, because I had run a poll to replace Sora no Woto on Wednesday, and the poll went sour. I didn't like how the poll ran, and it felt like a good time to do it because the election was coming up in America, and it was like, voting's kind of weird, but it's also important. So I made that video, and that was cool. It got a great reception, and then I kind of dropped the ball and just didn't do anything about it for a while because I'm an idiot, and I don't really have an excuse for that. I'm just an idiot. And so nothing happened for a while. Until last week when some people in my Discord were like, hey, you know about that poll thing? Weren't you going to do something about that? Why haven't you done anything about that? And the answer is, oh shit, I haven't. Let me do something about that. So I did. And last week we put up a brand new poll in a brand new format, and I used Google Forms for this poll. And this will have graphics, so I'll put some things that are screenshots in the video here. So I ran a poll. I gathered a bunch of shows that I thought fit the original intent of the Wednesday slot, which is weird shit and I guess like weird shit and more psychologically shit and stuff that makes you think and things like that. So I grabbed a group of 8 shows, which is quite a number. I grabbed Casher Sins, Ucho Ten Kazoku, Kyoso Giga, Technolize, Humanity Has Declined, Moyashimon, Kuchu Bronco, and Dusk Maiden of Amnesia, because they were things that I found. I was like, these seem interesting. I'll throw them on a poll. But instead of doing the poll the way that we've been doing polls forever, which is just you can click the checkbox next to the thing and that says you voted for it, or you can unclick the checkbox next to the thing and you didn't vote for it. Neat. We did it differently because I don't like that voting system, and I don't like a lot of things about it, but I explained those all in the polling video, which was before. So I made a Google poll. A Google Forms poll, and for each show, I gave each respondent 5 options, starting at the middle with meh, going down on the negative side to hell no, and up on the positive side to hell yeah, with a nah and a yeah in between. So our 5 ratings are hell no, nah, meh, yeah, and hell yeah. So those 5 options are great. They are evocative and like people feel them. And they also give people a range of options to choose from for each show. I think the most important one here, and the one of the options that I think got the most votes on almost every single answer, was meh. Because a lot of the time, people don't know what these shows necessarily are. They're like, I've never heard of this one, or I've heard of it, but I don't really know anything about it, so I don't care whether you watch it. If you watch it, maybe I'll watch it. If you don't, maybe I won't. Cool. And I think that's a really important piece to have, because there's a distinct difference between I'm ambivalent about this and I'm not voting for this, right? There's kind of a huge difference. So here's what I did. I threw all of those shows into the poll and I opened it up, and it got 200 plus responses, which is not that many, but that's okay because the responses that I got were interesting and people had to vote for all of the shows, which is far more valuable than just voting for one of them, I think. And I came out with a bunch of numbers. And a bunch of graphs. And I'll put the graphs right here. They're cool looking. They're not that terribly useful, but the numbers are super useful. The question, of course, is what do you do with the numbers? How do you gauge a hell no versus a hell yeah? And how do you gauge a meh versus a yeah? Well, with numbers. And what I decided to do was to assign each of these responses a numerical value. So, for each show, and we'll take Casher and Sins because it's the first one on the poll as our example. For each show, if you answered meh, that's +0, plus or minus 0. That vote doesn't influence the way that the poll feels about the show numerically, but it does influence how I know how people feel about the show, which is there are a bunch of people who don't know about it or don't care, who might watch it if I watch it and might not. That's useful information to know. Then, on the negative side, if you vote nah, not really into it, then that's a -1 to the total. And if you vote hell no, then that's a -2. If you vote yeah, that's a +1. And if you vote hell yeah, that's a +2. So, we get Casher and Sins, which has 18 hell no's and 42 nahs and 70 mehs and 53 yeahs and 24 hell yeahs. And we can change that and convert those all into their -2, -1, +0, +1, +2. So we end up with -36, -42, 70, but that's 0, 53, and 48. If we sum all of those together, we get a total of 23. For Uchoten Kazoku, we have a total of 55. For Kyoso Giga, a total of 101, etc., etc. For a show like Moyashimon, which a lot of people weren't into, we ended up with a score of -61. That's pretty interesting. And a positive total of only 51. I also decided to extract out, because I wasn't sure if this was the way that I wanted to do it, and I wanted to figure out how I could figure the best answer to who won the poll, since it's a little bit more complicated than it's the one with the most votes, right? So I also pulled out the just positive totals, and those align very well with the total totals. But what we get when we do this is a qualitative, not just quantitative, understanding of what shows people want to watch and how much they want to watch them. So those people who really want to watch Kyoso Giga pulled it out. The number of hell yeahs for Kyoso Giga is 48. That's a lot of +2s. That ends up being a +96 overall. And there were a lot less people who are uninterested in watching Kyoso Giga. Only a -17 and a -36. So Kyoso Giga wins the poll. And you can look at all the numbers and they all match up and they all make a lot of sense. It's also useful to have the positive only total, because I think it's more important for me as a creator to know what is the positive audience of this show that I'm watching, the people who are going to be excited about it, versus the people who are going to be unexcited about it. Because people being unexcited about it, while that's important to know how much of my audience is maybe being alienated by the choice of a show that won the poll, it's not as important as knowing who's going to be excited about this, who's going to be in the comment section commenting on each video, who's going to be watching videos when they come out and caring about them, and interacting with me and talking about the story and thinking about it actively in the way that I want my content to function. And those are the people who are answering yeah and hell yeah. And even some of the people who are answering meh, because they don't know that the show, might be cool, and they might find that out through my content. And I think that's super cool. So, my overall takeaway thing for this whole segment about the poll is I think we found a way that works. I think this works pretty well. We'll see how my explaining how I'm doing the math on the back end alters the way that poll results come in the future, because people knowing that a hell no is a -2 might change the way that they use a hell no. And that's an interesting thing that might be a problem in the future, but isn't now because people didn't know that when they were voting. And I didn't know it when I set the poll up. It was just like, maybe I'll do that. Maybe it'll be something else. Regardless, I think this worked really well. I think I have a much better understanding because of this poll of what people are willing to watch, what they really want to watch, what they really don't want to watch, and a little bit of why. Because for each person that got to submit their poll answers, they also got to submit some other thoughts and comments. Not just a comment on the Patreon post, but comments that only I see. And a lot of those are really cool. There are a lot of really cool things here. There are definitely some scattered, like, oh, watch this thing instead. Why isn't this on the poll? But there are also things like one person saying this particular anime is one of the only shows that I cannot stand and probably couldn't bear to watch if you were reacting to. That's really interesting. I didn't have any indication that that show was like that. It was for Dusk Maiden of Amnesia. That's interesting information to have. It's only one response, but neat. Good to know. Likewise, seeing people being like, I hope that this works out. I'm excited for this poll system. It works much better. I like it. That's super cool. Or a very drunk person going, Technolize would be some ride. Kyoso Giga is fucking Rie Matsumoto. Like, how much better can you do? Anyway, that shit's a fucking sound old banger. Humanity Has Declined would also be cool. The rest, like, cool, but you know, not Hamasaki or Matsumoto. Look, T, it's your life. I'm just a dollar patron. Don't let me opinion cloud you judgment. 3 O'Haras and a cider of some sort have clouded mine. I don't know how to end this. Lots of pressure here. Bye, XOXOXOXOXO. Which, while it's not very helpful in any way, shape, or form, is hilarious and absolutely made my day the day that I put the poll up and that response came in. It was wonderful. So, the advantages of this polling system are infinite. I have a better understanding of what shows people want to watch and why those shows are appealing to people, and generally the way that my audience feels about the shows that I'm putting up. And that's super neat. I like it a lot. I hope that other people maybe see this. I don't know, if you've got reactors who you think have fucked up polling systems, maybe send them this video and be like, hey, somebody figured out a way that kind of works. It's easy. Like, I don't take credit for making Google Forms. Google Forms just exists. It just works better than the Patreon polls, because the Patreon polls legit kind of suck. And this was pretty easy to implement, and it works a lot better. So, yay! We will be beginning Kyoso Giga come next Wednesday, and I hope that people are looking forward to that, because I am. I know very little about that show, and I'm very excited to watch it. So, neat. It's exactly the kind of show that I wanted to come out of this kind of a Wednesday poll, as opposed to something that came out because of, like, literally because of polling dynamics, the shows that won the previous poll, and that didn't feel right to me. Super interesting. Okay, let's see. Talked about seasonals, talked about polling and stuff. Let's talk about, like, some general channel-y stuff, like, just in general. I mentioned it before in the video, but the Mega account is back. Super nice. Took a lot of back and forth with the Mega copyright peeps, because, like, I submitted a bunch of disputes, and then I submitted them wrong, and then they didn't respond to that, didn't tell me that I submitted them wrong. So, like, a month later, I'm like, hey, did those disputes go through? And they're like, oh, those were done wrong. You have to do them again. And so I had to do them again, and then I did them again, and then it worked. Now I have a Mega account again. Whee! How wonderful. Other news, I mean, Pixel Drain has been kind of on the fritz. I might phase it out completely as an option. It's just not been consistent with its uploads. It's gotten better in the last couple days. We'll see if that lasts. But I like the guy who has made Pixel Drain. I support him on Patreon, and that gives you guys, like, ad-free access to all of the Pixel Drain videos, which I think is really cool. And I like his work ethic and the way that he's working. So I'll stick with them or him for a little bit longer, but if it keeps going on the fritz, we might phase it out and look for other options. WeTransfer added to the whole system has been great, I think, for picture-in-picture videos. It's been lovely. It's really fast, and it doesn't have any of the same kind of problems that Mega does, which is really cool. It doesn't have bandwidth caps. But I think Mega is still kind of a workhorse solution in the background for the picture-in-picture versions. Yeah. Other stuff on the channel. Yeah, Mega account is back. There's not that much else to talk about channel-wise. We're just doing stuff, watching shows and things. Coming up on the end of Princess Tutu, so we're going to be doing another polling situation for a Friday show, which should be interesting. I don't know what kind of a theme I'm going to go for, if at all, on that slot poll situation, but we'll figure it out when we figure it out. The fact that we now have a way of polling that seems to work is a big boon and a big, like, fire under my ass to get me to actually do good polls and stuff, because it's a lot easier and it makes a lot more sense, and there's a lot less of that resistance that's like, gosh, I hate the system that I'm using. Why do I have to go and do this again? Because I don't hate the system that I'm using now, because it's nice. It's kind of wonderful. Personal stuff, general life and things. I'm still, still getting used to living here. This is an interesting place, and it's interesting to be living with other people. I think it's super good for me and for my general mental health to have like socialization as an option around. It's really wonderful, and the people who live here are fantastic. It's still very strange to not be terrified all the time, is one way that I would put it. And I don't mean to get super deep or super dark here in this moment. That's saved for when it's relevant to shows that we're watching. But it's strange to not be like rightfully anxious constantly because you feel like your entire life is in limbo at every moment. It's really wonderful, and it's weird to get used to. Being like kind of content is very strange. It's also kind of scary because that sort of fire of need and starvation, we talk about hunger as something, not just, hunger for food, but hunger for success, hunger for stability, hunger for being okay. And it's weird to have that gone, and it's weird to find motivation when so much of your motivation was driven by need and absolute necessity. But it's been an interesting journey, and it's still very much an ongoing journey to really double down on the core values of the channel and like, why am I watching this media? What can I glean from it? And how do I explain to the doubting voice in the back of my brain that what I'm doing is valid and valuable? And it's interesting and it's difficult, but it's also valid and valuable, and it's a really wonderful experience. I'm a lot happier here, and I think that shows through in a lot of my content. But I'm a lot happier here. Another thing that's been really good is I've stopped drinking almost entirely. I had like half a beer last night. Friday there were people over, had like half a beer and felt weird and stopped drinking it. But I went pretty much cold turkey on alcohol, which is wonderful. And I haven't really talked about this in depth. I haven't really talked about like drinking or the alcoholism that I found myself engaged in. But when things got really bad at the previous place I was living, at my father's house, I started drinking, and I started drinking pretty heavily, and it was very much self-medication, very much to numb the pain, and very much to numb the fear, because fear was the ever-present, the air that I breathed and the water that I drank was terror. And alcohol does a lot to numb fear. It helps a lot, but it doesn't really help. It just represses. And we talk about repression a lot on this channel. It's not a very good thing. And using substances to do it is also not a very good thing. But over the last month or so, I've phased out drinking, and it's been a couple of tries to really get there for sure. But I've phased it out, and gosh, it feels so much better. Like it feels so much better. Oh, and reminding myself of that last night when I had that half a beer and started feeling bad, like started feeling dragging and not good, was interesting and cool. And it was a good experience because usually that first beer tips me over the edge into bad judgment, have another. And it's good that that's changing, and I'm proud of myself for it. It's important. And I hope that it continues to, I hope that my health continues to improve because of it. In general, I've been working out a lot. Don't have access to a gym, just got some free weights and concrete patio where I go outside and do push-ups and stuff. But it's pretty obvious. You can see it in my face, but I've gained a good bit of weight, and good weight, muscle weight. I've gained about 15 pounds since starting this channel, which is huge. I'm 5'5", 5'6", so that's a lot of weight, and it shows. And I'm a lot healthier and a lot happier and a lot more physically fit because of it. And that's just eating well and taking care of yourself and not being bound by terror, and also not drinking constantly and drinking yourself into a stupor constantly, all of which are really wonderful and good things. And I'm, again, very, very proud of myself for those things. So a lot of my focus in the last couple of months has been on those things, and a lot of the kind of fuckery on the channel over those months has been, like missing a lot of show days and then pushing them off until later in the week. That's just going to happen anyway, but a lot of that has been because of feeling like shit, and or like when I really hardcore quit drinking, I felt miserable for a short time and then started feeling better. So a lot of stuff has been going on with that, but it's looking up, absolutely. There's another element of my life that I want to mention that I think is really cool and really neat, and I'm really happy about it. I've gotten a group together to play D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. I've been and I've mentioned this offhand in a lot of reactions, and I've made like jokes and references to it, but I've been really interested in tabletop RPGs and role playing for a little while. I never got the opportunity to engage in that kind of stuff when I was a kid or a teenager. I never had the friend group who was interested in it, and kind of had the same idea that a lot of people had, which is like, oh, that's weird nerd shit. But I was a weird nerd, so I don't know. Even nerds will look down on nerds. Even a thief hates a liar, right? But then discovered that thing called Critical Rule, Critical Role, and watched all of it multiple times. I'm caught up with all of CR, have been for a good long while. But that was like the background of my existence for months, and then months again as I rewatched it, and then months again as I rewatched it again. The whole idea of people sitting around and collaboratively creating a story together, like because of their individual motivations, it sounds somewhat familiar to some of the concepts that I've talked about, where it's like, oh, part of the reason that anime is valuable is because it's a bunch of creative people all making sure that their ideas align to create something really cool for an audience. That means that there's a really high concentration of interesting ideas, and tabletop RPGs, especially when they feature lots of talented people, do a very similar thing where a bunch of people are collaborating on the kinds of stories that they want to tell and how they want those stories to go. I thought that was super neat, but my mind didn't really click into the idea of I could do this, partly because Matthew Mercer is such a fucking demigod when it comes to being a DM, but my mind didn't go, I can do this, until I started watching Dimension 20, which is another TRPG show. It's the College Humor cast, or some of the College Humor cast. I would go look up Dimension 20 Fantasy High. You can go watch it on YouTube, and it's a humor-focused D&D campaign situation, and it's hilarious and wonderful, but there's also something really interesting, which is that Brennan, the dungeon master, is I believe he's a psychology major, or is he psychology or philosophy? I actually should look that up. It's one or the other. Either way, it's useful. Brennan Lee Mulligan, psychology, philosophy. Yep. Yeah. From SUNY, Ulster, philosophy, humanities. Great. He's a philosophy major, and he works a lot of that shit into his... And psychology would have worked, too, because there's a lot of psychological stuff. And there's honestly a lot of crossover between philosophy and psychology, especially when you get into, epistemology and the knowledge of knowledge, right? Yeah. But he pulls a lot of that shit in here, and I just found myself fascinated by the way that these people, not just the characters, but the people playing them, interact with each other and treat each other. There's this powerful sense of not just friendship, but overwhelming unconditional respect between these comedians that comes out from their willingness to embarrass themselves in front of each other. And it has been one of the most inspiring things that I've ever seen, is watching Dimension 20 Fantasy High, especially the second season, which you have to pay for Dropout to go and get. And I'm not shilling Dropout, but it's worth it, because the storylines get a lot more intricate and a lot deeper and a lot darker. And there's a lot of conversation about relationships and social dynamics that I found super fascinating and super useful. But anyway, all of this was happening in the background of my mind, and finally, after a while, I got somebody who lives here to start watching some Fantasy High, and they caught the bug. They caught the D&D bug, and so they were like, man, I kind of want to play. This would be cool to play, but we would need somebody to DM. I was sitting at a party. I'm like, okay, I'll DM. I'll do it. Somebody has to do it, I'll do it. And it has bloomed out from there. We now have four player characters, and did a session 0 last week on Wednesday. I think we did it last week. Did a session 0 situation where they ended up having a tavern brawl and meeting a bunch of people in a tavern and finding a couple of different quests, and then finding a gigantic lair of genetically altered rats, and the Rat King, who was their leader, creepy elf dude who had turned himself into a were-rat and was fucking fully insane. Super fun little adventure that we did. It was based off of a DM's Guild supplement, which you can go and grab. It's free. It's called Madness of the Rat King, and it's related to the Fiery Grog Tavern. If you just go on Google and search up Fiery Grog Tavern, you'll find all the stuff for it. And it was super nice. It was super good. And then later today, I'm mostly prepped for it. But later today we'll be doing the first real session of a more broad campaign. I'm gonna run Waterdeep Dragon Heist, which is exciting and terrifying because I decided for my first ever D&D campaign to not do we're in the woods. I can choose just adventures to do and send them into caves and have them fight bad guys, whatever bad guys there are, and it's really simple. Instead of that, I decided, yeah, let's do a campaign that's fully set in one of the most intricate and detailed cities in the lore, and try and do it justice and have a good time with it and give these characters the ability to run around a city where they could be like, hey, can I look for a herbalist? And I'll be like, I guess. I mean, sure. I'm sure that there is one in the city. I just haven't thought of them yet. Yeah, Jimmy John the herbalist. He's right around the corner. You're good to go. So it's terrifying and wonderful, and I'm excited. It's good. We've got a half-elf paladin who is going to multi-class rogue, and he is an idiot. He has an 8 in intelligence and is a very dumb boy. He was tricked by his deity into making his oath, and it's very fun and very funny. We've got a very antisocial Loxodon druid who is literally a gigantic elephant person. He is 7'6" and weighs like 380 pounds. Gigantic elephant person, but he has a strength of 10. So he's not very strong at all. He's kind of just like a slow-moving elephant dude who can wild shape. We've got a classic Goliath barbarian who is named Toshinori Kogami. Kogami after the Psycho-Pass character. I forget who the Toshinori comes from. It might be a My Hero Academia character. I'm pretty sure it is. But like, when I was doing character development with this character, or with this player, he's like, man, I wish that my character, he's a Goliath barbarian, this whole, like, raging and getting so angry that he takes less damage feels so anime to me. I just want him to be, like, a Japanese kind of styled anime character, and I want him to be on a revenge plot. And I'm like, that sounds great. You know what? Goliaths aren't even a part of this world, so we're saying that the Goliaths live in the mountains. I think that the isolationist world of Goliaths who follow codes and have a semi-feudal society built around honor and following of rules and rules of combat, sure, they're Japanese now. That's a Japanese-styled society. That's where you came from. Why not? And yeah, here's like, you've got a shard of a sword that is your only clue to the killer of your parents. Have at it. And I know who killed his parents, but he has no idea. And he'll have fun finding that out. Yeah, we got those kids, and our newest addition for this week's game is going to be our artificer, who is a Simic hybrid artificer who got pulled out of the ocean by an ancient warforged. Yes, it's Forgotten Realms and they're a Warforged. Fuck off. I can do what I want. I'm the DM. He got pulled out of the ocean by a Warforged named JD, Junior Defender, who killed himself to pull this guy out. All the salt water is now corroding JD's body. But JD, in his like last act, turned himself into a gauntlet that this artificer is now wearing, like, that's powered by JD's spirit energy. So he's got this like mechanical symbiotic gauntlet that will slowly grow to encompass his entire form, and he's willing. He like likes that, and he can use it to cast like Shocking Grasp and stuff, and that's pretty fucking sick. He'll be going armor artificer, so it makes sense. His symbiote will eventually grow to cover his entire body, but he'll have like a biomechanical Simic hybrid melded with technology artificer thing going. I think that's dope. I think that's super cool. Yeah. So I don't know. The thing that I'm most worried about today for today's session is like getting them where I need them to be, because having them start at the Fiery Grog Tavern is not where the Waterdeep adventure starts, and the adventure hook for Waterdeep is kind of specific. I kind of really need them to get to the Yawning Portal and like fight a troll and then get approached by Floon. Once that happens, I'm in the clear, and like everything that I need is pretty well set out. But they're across the city from the yawning portal and don't have any reason to go there. So I'm going to be spending a couple hours figuring out why the fuck they'll go where I need them to go when we start playing later today. We'll see. All right. Anyway, this quick extemporaneous video has turned into a 40-minute slog. Sorry, guys. I hope those of you that watched most of the whole thing are excited about the things that I'm excited about and whatnot. But I wanted to get this out because some people rightly said in my Discord that I haven't made any videos that are just talking to my YouTube audience in a while, and I should probably do that. And I was like, oh, yeah, they're right. I should probably do that. And so I'm doing that. And now I've done that. And yeah, I hope I've addressed all the things. I think I've addressed most of the things that people really want me to address. The thing I wanted to do right at the top was be like, seasonals, not happening, because I'm getting a flood of comments. They're like, are you going to watch Beastars Season 2? Are you going to watch this show? Are you going to Teeaboo, this thing is out? Do you know that this thing is out yet? 7 people have commented already on the same video that this thing is out. Are you going to watch it? Do you know that it's out? You know that it's out. The subs are out. The PAS subs, the one that you were waiting for before, they're out now. So if you're waiting for that, they're out. No, I'm not waiting for any of those. I'm not going to watch any seasonal shows while they're airing. I'm not super interested. There are tons of other shows to watch, and they're less likely to get me copyright strikes, more likely to be useful, valid, interesting content, and more likely to be the kind of content that draws in the kind of audience that I want to foster. Sorry, but I'm not sorry about that at all. Sorry. Okay, I think that's good. I think that's the video that I wanted to make. I think it's been made. We did it. Whee! Yeah. Cool. Thanks to all of you who are either purely YouTube supporters or Patreon supporters or have been in the past. I love you guys. You guys are all the best, and you make this all possible for me, and that can't be understated. Although it inevitably does get understated every time I state it, because yeah. The actual phrase is cannot be overstated, isn't it? It is. It is. Yeah, that cannot be overstated, and I'm not overstating it. Thank you. It means the world. All right, that'll be it. Peace.